Well, let's bring our panel of party commentators on board now. This week I'm joined by Liberal commentator Susan Smith. Kate Harrison is a Conservative commentator, and Anne McGrath is the National Director of the NDP. Good to see you all again. Thanks for being here.
Nice to see you, Peter.
Susan, let me start with you. We now have another motion calling for a sweeping health committee investigation now into the pandemic response from the government. An order for thousands of documents, including emails and notes from the Prime Minister's office. The government side says, again, this is another one of those motions that will paralyze government. But the government's saying that it's, tonight the PMO is saying it's not going to be a test of confidence when this vote is held on Monday. When it was a test of confidence, it was because that motion would have paralyzed the government. This one's going to paralyze the government too. What's the difference here? Why isn't this a test of confidence?
Well, that's a good question, Peter, but I think perhaps maybe they want to show that they want to let the Canadians see how foolish some of these motions are and some of the paralysis that can take place. What happened yesterday involved a motion with the word corruption in it, which is actually a criminal activity. And that really, I think, demonstrates if the opposition really thought that that was in fact the case and that was what was going on in government, then that clearly demonstrates a lack of confidence in the government. I think what you're seeing, though, is the kind of silly shenanigans that the Conservatives are putting in place. And I think it's actually putting Aaron O'Toole in a really tough spot. He hasn't yet been able to brand himself as a leader, and what he's having to do is continually respond to the kinds of antics of Michelle Rempel and Pierre Poilievre. And if he's trying to put a different face on the Conservative Party and position them as a party of opposition or a party that could lead this country, they actually have to put in the window what they would do for Canadians instead of playing partisan games. Okay, Canadians don't care about what's going on in committee. Canadians care about what's going to land on their dinner tables.
All right, Kate, let me let you respond to that, noting that this morning Mr. O'Toole was side by side with Michelle Rempel-Garner to talk about this motion. What do you think's changed here? The stresses on the system are going to be the same with this motion as they would have been under the WE motion, but this one won't be a test of confidence. What are your thoughts?
I think it's because the Liberals have realized that trying to defend not sharing all information around the pandemic response and answering some pretty straightforward questions around rapid tests and things like that would be a hard case to make to Canadians. If you start dangling the threat of a confidence motion over every single uncomfortable or inconvenient question that the opposition poses to you, you run the risk of looking like you're willing to throw the government in disarray over effectively anything. And it would substantiate the narrative that the Liberals want to see an election sooner rather than later if they're going to start dangling that confidence motion at the drop of a hat. So I think that the Liberals have rightly read that trying to make the case to defend that decision on issues related to pandemic preparedness, which a lot of Canadians want to see answers about, would be very difficult for a lot of Canadians to understand. Right. Why would we go to an election without providing that information?
And let me turn to you. The one thing this also does, if it's not a test of confidence, is it doesn't put the NDP in a position of having to decide if it didn't want an election on Wednesday, it doesn't want an election on Monday, if it's a confidence test. So what do you think has happened here? Why is this not a vote of confidence?
Well, I think that yesterday's kind of shenanigans really, I didn't really look good on either the Liberals or the Conservatives. It was clear, I think, to everybody that the Liberals were itching for an election and they were using this as an excuse to try and get the election that they wanted. I also think that the Conservatives played into their hands by overreaching and going a little bit too far in the motion for the committee. Having the word corruption in there was a problem, and I think that they were overreaching. They were perhaps playing to their base. I don't know what they were doing, but they overreached. I don't think they wanted an election necessarily either, but clearly the Liberals did. And what happened was that Canadians who are, as Susan rightly says, worried about what's going to be on their dinner table, worried about whether or not their jobs are going to be there next month, right, worried about their kids in school. That was a political theater that is not really consistent with the moment. However, I will say, if the Liberals turn every single demand for accountability and scrutiny into a confidence measure, that would be so irresponsible.
Right, but if they really
they need to be examined.
If they're really itching for an election, and the grounds for protesting and making a test of confidence, the last motion was that, look, you're going to tie up the public service when they're busy doing other stuff, and that's not on. And they have a chance. If they really want an election, they have a chance to look to try and trigger one again on Monday. So, Susan, why not push ahead with that? If Liberals really want an election, go for it.
Well, I think it goes back to that word that Anne and I both said, and I'm not going to say again because I don't like it, because I don't think it's true. I don't think there is corruption in this government, so I did say it. I think that was the kicker on this one, and the wide-reaching. I mean, the motion, and most ordinary Canadians won't have taken the time to read the motion from yesterday. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. I think the House of Commons has ways and means to do these examinations. There's committees, there's the Ethics Committee, there's the Public Accounts Committee that are chaired by Conservatives. These, as well as all the other committees, if there are, and I think light should be shed on these pandemic spending decisions. There's no question of that, and the Liberals don't have any issue with that. What they do have issue is loaded up committee motions or committee mandates that could be, might as well just say, let us do whatever the heck we want, call whoever we want for no absolute gain other than to promote ourselves as a conservative brand, right? And that's exactly what it was. So I don't think that's productive for anybody, but I do think, and I don't think you're going to continue to see everything being put forward as a confidence motion. Depends how things track. Maybe you see the all economic update be put forward as a confidence motion. That's possible. I definitely think, and then the budget will be, it is by very nature.
So Kate, that takes us to, the motion, presumably not a test of confidence. The NDP supports it on Monday because they want to support the motion. That this motion compels the Health Committee to get to work on this stuff. I suppose what I'm watching for now is to see, what does all of this mean? Does that mean that we'll actually see the parties get back together and try and negotiate a timetable for producing documents and actually show that they can work together? Or are we past that point now? Are we past the point now where we're just covering runway here till we get to the fall of the government and an election?
Yeah, I think that it's in both the NDP and the Conservative and the Bloc's interest to try and make this work. I think that Canadians, by and large, want to see answers on these issues. And especially when it comes to pandemic spending, issues like rapid tests, use of masks, border closures, everything like that Canadians have been wanting answers about for some time. This is the avenue to go about and do it. It would look pretty rich for the Prime Minister to stand up and talk about the importance of transparency and have these, kind of weekly or every other day availabilities and not start providing that information. So I do think that we will get to a point where perhaps it's not as big a scope as what the Conservatives would like to see, but there is some meaningful movement on providing information through that committee. And I think it's really incumbent on the NDP, who supported this when it came forward to Health Committee previously, to continue to offer that support and not cave to a reduced scope as what determined by the Liberals. Yeah,
it doesn't sound like in talking to the health critic Don Davies earlier on the program, it sounds like he likes what's in this motion. He's got some other ideas too. But Anne, let me ask you to wrap up here. Do you see this? How important will it be to watch how this unfolds, to whether or not these parties get past what happened in the House yesterday in the test of confidence to actually trying to make the Parliament work, if you think that's really what they want?
I think if every demand for scrutiny leads to paralysis, then we're in a very sorry state. I don't think anyone should accept the idea that you can shovel billions of dollars out the door and not do some kind of, due diligence on where it went and who it went to and all of those kinds of things. And the other thing that I think is important in this motion is the request for information on preparation for a future pandemic, because I don't think anyone believes that this is a one-time thing. We are in a second wave now in many parts of the country, and this could happen again. And certainly one of the lessons of this pandemic, I think, has been that we were not prepared, and we must be prepared in the future. So we have to look at what's happened, what the conduct of the government has been during this pandemic, but also what the preparations are for the next one. So I think that there's a lot in that motion that I think would be very helpful. And I hope that all parliamentarians will do their work and make sure that we find out what has happened and what we're doing to be ready for the next time.
Yeah, well, as always, they have time to talk over the weekend. We'll see where this heads before we have this vote on this motion on Monday, and see if by the time we get to Monday, it's still not a confidence vote. So we'll watch for that too. Susan Smith, Kate Harrison, Anne McGrath, always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us again tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.